Hi, Paulie here. So, there's a Swedish company called Fria Ligan, Fria Ligan. They do some wonderful work. I'm going to look at several of their games soon, but I want to look at what was kind of their first. Now, they set this one up as their look at classical fantasy. It's really a very interesting game and really deserves a look. It's called Forbidden Lands. So, it comes in a box because they're trying to be as old school as possible. Love this artwork. So, you can find this on the Fria Ligan website. I think Adophius also sells it. So, you open up, there's a box. Now, they've got lots of nice nurnies in here. So, it comes complete with cool maps of their setting. Ta-da! All set up for doing hex crawls. So, there are very faint hexes on these. Interesting idea they've got. It comes with stickers. You can stick those onto the map, and as the players kind of home in on areas and so that they can see, these might be dungeons, these might be ruins, these might be mystic sites, these might be settlements and so on. You use the sticks and so on to mark them as they found them and kind of identify them what they are. So each group playing will make that map theirs in their own particular way. I like that. It's a nice idea. So it's customizable. Other nurnies come in this. I mean, this is terrific. They're purchases that you get when you go online. So they were trying to be traditional. So we've got an umpire screen and cool artwork on that, and these hardcover books. So we end up with, inside we've got these amazing hardcover books that are the actual rules. You can see it's amazing quality that we've got here. So their setting. Now this is Swedish done. Now I'm Australian, as you can hear. So but yeah, I've spent a lot of time traveling the world, and I know Sweden and Finland and so on pretty well. But I find it kind of interesting because my world, being Australian, is essentially one of light. The survival problem here is water. I always find it funny traveling in the USA or in Europe. These are soft lands. I could survive anywhere. You know, army. I've had to eat feral cat. But it's like, for these guys who're Swedish, winter is the enemy. Winter comes in and everything freezes and you are dead unless you have shelter and you have fire and you have heat, and if you had to have stored food for the winter so nothing grows. So to me that's kind of an alien setting. I really like that. So it's a very Swedish setting, and a lot of Scandinavian fantasy is quite grim. So I have to say this setting is a grim one. So what they have said is, in the long ago, there's another continent and it was failing and bad things were happening. People fled this, and they were the followers of this particular god, and they landed in these lands. Now these lands were run by the Elves. Now the Elves are basically this very old and mystic group, and the Elves will basically have like a heart gem, and that kind of contains their soul. So if the body dies, their soul kind of goes into this gem, and the other Elves can kind of take this into this veil, because they don't entirely exist in our world. They can cross through this veil and they can kind of plant these things and regenerate them and bring them back and so on. And this was their area, and the dwarves were kind of in some ways working with these people, kind of helping to make this world. But then these humans have all turned up, and this god has kind of struck a bit of a deal and said, give them part of this world to live in. Okay, well, they take a few oaths and they do it, and off they go. However, as hundreds of years have gone past, essentially one section of this world turned incredibly corrupt and so on, and there was a schism because the fleet of refugees that came over, they were led by a crow, and the crow was carrying, I think the crow was carrying a snake or something. So some people, the snake's what's sacred, because the crow was just carrying the snake. Others, no, the crow is the god, so that's what's sacred. So these people turn into schismed religions which are filled with zealots. So essentially these people begin absolutely slaughtering each other over this just minor interpretations of this religion. And one lot over in this area sort of turn completely really, really kind of right-wing crazy. Some other people flee them off to these other lands and so on, and then they turn bad, and a guy starts summoning demons and so on, and so things go to shit. And in any case, in the end, a whole section of this world which has gone to pieces gets sealed off. There's a set of mountains, and walls are placed across the mountain passes because there's so much going on down there, this sort of demon summoned and horrible things, that this kingdom just says no one crosses that line, no one goes in there, we don't care, it's all monsters and demons and horrible stuff. Boom. And then this mist closed in over that area, and there were still villages and towns and so on in there, but the thing is, this mist was all around, and if you went into the mist you just didn't come back, and it stayed this way for a few generations. So people kind of clung on in these tiny little settlements. They couldn't get to the other settlements because you couldn't get through the mist, so they kind of vaguely knew there was another town there, but had everyone survived? They didn't know. So the setting is this mist has now mysteriously risen up and vanished. So now this land can be explored again, and these creatures and things that were sheltering can start exploring. Now, as characters, you are either people from the kingdom who have decided we're going to go over the wall and see what's down there, because there were like once mighty armies and horrible demons and treasures and whatever, so that's been sitting there, maybe it's all there for the taking. Or you could be villagers that have been trapped in these villages that are now trying to explore, and you've got a vague map of like, well, this is what Granddad said used to be around here, let's go see what's still here. However, some of the demonic forces and so on that were there before have just been biding their time or lying in wait, and now they're expanding out as well. So it's a game of exploration and trying to figure out, what's going on. And there are backstories behind all of these terrible disasters and all of these things. And these are there. It's mythic. These things are in there. You can actually find them and deal with them. Right. Grim setting, but interesting. So on a character kind of level, you can pick what kin you're from. You can be human. You can be, it's kind of like, it's not really a halfling, but let's call it a halfling. And there's also goblins, and they are sort of oddly tied together. They actually kind of, they don't like each other, but they sort of hang out. They're kind of a twinned race. When the halflings are kind of almost a, they're kind of a thumb in the eye of Tolkien's hobbits. These are kind of unpleasant little people, and they have a kid, and it's like it might be actually be a goblin, in which case it's handed over to the goblins to raise. You don't want to raise a goblin in a decent hobbit family. It's kind of like your middle class relatives and so on. There are orcs, and the orcs, they've got like a huge chip on their shoulders because they were a race that the elves and so on, they raised up to basically be warriors for them. So when all these wars and things broke out, the elves weren't going to do anything about this. We're mighty immortals. Send the orcs in to fight for us. And then when things went badly, they just said, we'll just withdraw our magical support because we don't really want to get caught in this. We'll go back behind the veil. So they left the orcs alone. So the orcs, the humans had been their enemies through all this time, so they're not fond of humans, but they really hate those elves who were supposed to be their support, their lords, their buddies, who left them in the lurch. You can be dwarves, and of course the dwarves are kind of annoyed because they were kind of the maintenance crews. We're kind of the ones that were supposed to be kind of helping to magically do stuff that would make this world happen, and then everyone else came and smegged it all up. So okay, well they can try and fix it. All right. You can be there's sort of anthropomorphic wolves, kind of almost like a werewolf. There are a wolf people that roam loose in the woods, and they survived with all of the mist and so on. But they're not too keen on some of the other races because I kind of see them as all kind of soft. They are the true children of the wilds and so on. So you can pick all of these things, and then you can pick, are you going to be warriors? You can be druids, which are magic using sorts. And they're pretty dire. The druids are actually the ones that use kind of nasty elemental magics or can summon creatures and things. So there's magic use, there's priests and all this sort of thing. It's a dice pool system. So what you're going to be doing is assigning points to characteristics, and then you get skills that you make, and when you're going to roll a skill, skill number plus characteristic number, roll that number of dice. I think in this case it's yeah, you count up the number of hits, once again against the usual task difficulties. Fantastic. However, these guys decided that every single monster should be different again. Now, this carries through into Fria Ligan's later stuff, like Alien, which we'll show you later on. Monsters, they're not something that just rolls set damage and does, you know, I've got 2 claws and a bite, whatever. Every single monster has a chart that it rolls on. When you go into fight with a monster, you do your moves and you do your hits and you try and beat its defense and you do damage and whatever on it, but the monster rolls on a chart of effects. So let us say it's a Manticore. The Manticore could, now it rears up and just flaps its wings and roars. Okay, everyone's got to make a roll to see if this numbing roar basically, you know, stuns them, or they run, you know, clutching their ears and bleeding or whatever. Or the thing could leap forward and try and bite someone, or the thing springs backwards and flicks its tail and fires off a whole lot of, you know, iron spikes from its tail at someone, or it swings around in a huge sweep firing a spray of iron spikes. Everyone's got to roll to see if they're randomly hit by one. So they're unpredictable, they're very dangerous. If you go fighting, if you just go seeking out monsters or other people and say, right, I'm going to fight them, you'll be killed, because you just can't keep doing that. It's quite a fairly realistic combat system. I'm going to walk around, I've got my chainmail and two-handed axe. Oh, he's got chainmail and two-handed axe. All right, well, I'll walk up and have a fight with him. All right, well, that's probably about a 50-50 chance of dying there. Yeah, you probably should have had a better plan than that. Ambush him, dry gulch him, you know, catch him while he's changing his shoes, make him your buddy instead. Okay, so the terrible forces that were running all the demons and so on that brought this place down are still out there. So there are some big stories going on, and some of these horrible religious schisms are around, and you'll bump into these accidentally as these are mutated. So exploration leads you into these bigger stories, and they've got these things planned out as campaigns. We'll look at those in a sec. What's kind of brilliant about this is resource management. I was talking about the winter and so on. So it moves seasonally. As you journey, there's really quite good rules for how your characters journey. You've got food and water resources, you've got to make camps, you've got to have characters that are on lookout, you've got to have people that are path finding and so on. You can get lost, you can get into environmental troubles depending on the environment you're going through. You can end up caught in brambles and swamps, you can be lost, you can lose equipment, things can break. So nice kind of journeying system as you're eating resources and so forth. When you find places, some of them, these things are empty ruins and all these kind of weird things. What you can do is you can try and set up your own base. You could just like buy a house in a village, but you could also try and clear out an old castle. So they've got nice rules for what kind of state the place is in and what work is going to need to be done. And then how comfortable and how survivable the place is depends on what amenities you make and create. There's a price and there's labor that go into these. So okay, so I'm going to put a roof on this thing, we're going to clear out this, we're going to make this deep place, this is going to be a root vegetable storage thing. Okay, that allows me to take resources that need to be kept cold and we can put them in here and they'll keep. We turn this place into a fireplace. All right, now you've got heat. And so what happens over winter and so on, you essentially see how well you survive. You can get sick, you can wither, you could die if you haven't prepared yourselves well. There's also a problem with making little strongholds and things, in that if you then go off adventuring and just leave it, something else can walk in. So there's these lovely little charts for like, oh, did you just walk out? Well, here's the random chart of, you know, what's set up while you're away. It could be just, you know, a bunch of harpies are now living in there, or some other adventures came wandering in. Oh, this is good, we're staying here now. You can use some of your coins and resources and things to hire people to look after it for you, and you can hire staff. So you can have a couple of men-at-arms looking after the place, and you can have some people working there. You end up, essentially, over time, you might be ending up setting up a little civilization in an area. You know, you find this keep, you clean it out. We need some people to grow food for us, or we'll hire a farmer to clear that stuff. Oh, well, look, we need more people. Well, look, we'll get a baker in so he can bake bread for us, and we'll start a mill there, and we'll bring in some more farmers, and now we're actually exporting grain. You've made this whole civilization, and people come in to try and take it off you. They've got rules there for people that come in, and so some of these groups come in and start telling, oh, you're on our territory, we want tax, or you're part on our territory, the king demands that you send people to help in his wars and so on. It's up to you. How are you going to respond to these? Are you going to tell them smeg off, or are you going to join in? Are you going to fight these guys? Are you going to gather people together and sort of make alliances and try and keep these absolute mobsters out of your area? It pulls you into the setting and makes you a part of it. So I haven't really seen many games who do such a good job of that kind of survival resource management, but also settlements and making your own place. Really good, very clear rules for this. So we've got 2 books in the main thing, Players and Games Master's guides. And the Games Master's, obviously the Games Master's the one that has all those rules on the monsters and the giants, and we've got harpies and all these sorts of things, and we've got all that expected stuff. They do some absolutely fantastic adventures. Once again, these are done as hardcovers, beautiful artwork, and these are campaigns set within that original map. So they've set up events and people and places and creatures defined, and these are these larger stories that fit in with their mythos of the place. Very well done. Again, they're kind of cruel and bitchy. It does have that dark kind of Swedish, these people are sacrificing horrible things to a blood god, and if you don't do anything about it, they're just going to keep going on. It's like, oh, all right, we better get in there. But smaller one here. So this one here, this is the Ravens Purge. This is kind of part of the basic story that we've looked at. Smaller one, Spal Quetzal. Again, just the artwork's just beautiful. These are all hardcover, sort of creepy things. So this is a big haunted, strange ruin that you can explore, which has weird conundrums and all sorts of things in it. Now they have brought out another setting for this. Now this is called the Bitter Reach. Same kind of world. It's a area up north. It's a glacial area which you can go up to. Now there's been this whole civilization up there that's been trapped in the ice, and the idea is there's settlements at the edge of the ice, which are there's sealers and whalers and fisher folk, but it's absolutely frozen territory. You can get ships which can take you up there, and the reason people like adventurers would go up there is that there's all these ruins you can find up in the ice that have strange technologies and weird magics and gold and wacky things up there. However, they're out there on the ice fields, which is just a dangerous place to explore. And what people don't really realize is that there is a whole mythos and background behind this, and you are now part of this story. They've done the same kind of idea. So we've got big old maps come with it, ta-da, and let's not forget our stickers. So this is a big hardcover book. Again, great artwork, solid as hell, and this lays out the mythos of what's actually happened here. And what's kind of neat about this one is that there's actually some real evil locked into the ice. So people come in there and they're looking for treasures, and I'll do this and I'll do that. What you're actually probably doing is accidentally destroying the things that were put here to lock this evil into the ice. As I'll deal with this horrible monster. Yeah, the monster's there to stop you interfering with the place because it's a guardian, because it's there to stop you unleashing this terrible elven crazy guy that had this whole empire, kill the humans and get rid of these scum who've destroyed this world and whatever. So this is locked in the ice for a reason. So there's politics amongst the different settlements. There's there's pirates and there's strongmen, and there's sort of all this stuff going on. And there are different factions. Some of them are actively trying to free this thing. Some of them are actively trying to stop it. You come in not knowing what's going on. It's up to you to kind of try and find what's happening. These horrible fell things out on the ice, strange undead hordes coming out of nowhere, and it's an interesting, what would you call it, boiling frog adventure. You're in there just in the environment, and you're not aware that the environment is slowly heating up, because you're in it, but bit by bit by bit you're going to find yourself drawn into this thing. So great piece of campaign design. In a way, I mean, it's going to come to because of the way it's set up as a story, it's going to come to a climax. So this is literally a campaign that you would run from sort of a early start. You're arriving, trying to survive, making a few bucks, finding a couple of little bits of G-jaws out there in the ice, and then getting some leads to some big stuff, and it's going to literally eventually have you struggling with cosmic forces trying to stop something that could destroy the planet. So a nice piece of epic work. So look, it may not be for everyone. The system is it's not wild sword swinging heroic play. If you want something where you burst into a room and there are 50 enemies and your mighty sword sings and you slaughter them all and you don't take a scratch, or you've got someone who's got magic that just heals you and whatever, not for you, because combat is dangerous, survival is difficult, you aren't somehow chosen by any power to survive, you don't have any magical brownie points that you can trash in to make that arrow miss your heart. If you screwed it, you screwed it. So it is grim, but again, it's designed for the role play of it, and it's how you personally handle these problems more than putting yourself into a dice roll situation. So with that in mind, this is a great piece of fantasy work. It's a very different look at a fantasy world. It's a very easy system. The monsters, as I said, each one's unique, and every encounter with one will be different, and these are the climaxes of an adventure. You don't go down the road, find a monster, go down the road, find a monster. No. This thing is terrorizing this area, or this thing has this terrible spell which has worked its way through. So fighting it is a big thing you've got to plan for, and it's memorable. So I think that's literally epic fantasy. It's grim, epic fantasy. The systems that were done in this, they've rolled over into other things that they've done, and Fria Ligan are a great company. They're doing some really interesting settings and really interesting work, some of which I'm going to look at with you guys later on. However, if you're looking for a very different kind of fantasy game, I would absolutely, thoroughly recommend Forbidden Lands. And if you're planning on getting into Forbidden Lands, the Bitter Reach, really worth getting hold of. Great piece of work. So yeah, take a look. Fria Ligan, Swedish role-playing games.